Hello, I'm Steve Maskery and I've got a fantastic system for ripping MDF panels or plywood panels to width consistently, repeatably and accurately. It's fantastic. Stay tuned. Welcome to Workshop Essentials. One of the first things I ever published on video was this track setting gauge. It's very easy. There's an adjustable head, moves backwards and forwards. There's a scale on here, and I can use this to set the position of my track for my track saw with reference to my edge of the board. And it's served me very well for many years. It's getting a bit tatty now. It's beginning to peel away here. And the scale itself, I used a steel tape measure for that. And obviously it's curved, so it doesn't stick down very well. These days we've got a much wider range of self-adhesive tape measures, like this one, which are nice and flat. So I'm going to remake it using this nice flat tape measure. The jig itself consists of a long stock, and I suggest you make this bit first because it needs to have a couple of coats of varnish on it to make the surface sealed so that this will stick to it. The head itself is made up of several pieces, so we start really over on the drill press.
One side of the head has to have a few holes drilled into it. The first hole is 15mm diameter, just over 3mm deep, to take a pressure pad cut from 3mm MDF. Then I drill right through at 6.5mm, which gives a bit of clearance for an M6 thread. The third hole is 10mm, deep enough to take a barrel nut. A quick check that the clamping mechanism is actually going to work, and then it's all glued together, making sure that the pressure pad hole is on the inside, of course. I'm making two gauges here, a master and a slave. The slave is all wood, but the master has a cursor cut from 2mm acrylic sheet. I drill 4 holes and elongate them so that I have a bit of wheel room later on. Finally, I scratch a line down the centre and darken it with a Sharpie. Then it gets screwed in place, scratched side down to avoid parallax errors, and the back corners sanded round so that I don't get mixed up with what is the datum surface of the head.
So this is my almost finished setting gauge. The head slides nicely but locks positively, and because of that pressure pad in that shallow hole, it doesn't chew up this edge of the stock. There is a gap between the top surface of the stock and the underside of the plastic cursor, and my self-adhesive scale is going to slide under there and be stuck down. But we don't know yet exactly where it's going to be stuck down. So just move that out of the way. My master needs to be set at some arbitrary distance to do a test cut on this board. So let's just set that up. Nearly to the back edge, not quite to the back edge, but nearly. So we'll say that much and lock it off. And then I'm going to make sure that the other end is set the same. Now, if you're only making one of these rather than a pair, and I've managed with that for 15 years, then it's very important that after you've set one end, you check the other, and you keep checking until you're certain that both are the same. Because what can happen, and especially on a big board that might not be perfectly flat, it could be a little bit crowned, what happens is when you push one end of the track, the other end moves if it's pivoting on a crown. So check before you make a cut that both ends of the track are set with this absolutely bang on. So we know that that is now parallel. We don't know what that distance is, and right now I don't care what that distance is. I'm just going to trim that few millimetres off the back edge, and then I can measure it. Now we come to measure the board, and this is actually cut at 528 millimetres. And if you've done it right, of course, it'll be 528 at that side as well. 528. So now we take our tape measure and we slide it underneath, under there like that, until it reads 528 on that cursor. 528, like that. That looks good to me. Brilliant. And then a bit of tape. Like that. So now we snip off the end, like that. About there. And save this because we've got a use for this in another project. And then we simply peel back the sticky covering and stick it down all the way along. I'll do that over at the bench, it's easier. So now I've got it stuck down nice and flat and straight and true, and it's really very easy to read. It's a bit fiddly to do that bit, if I'm honest, which is why I didn't film it, because you have to get a bit of it stuck down without moving it, and then you have to remove the gaffer tape, and then you work your way along trying to keep it nice and straight. So this is now finished. So let's see how accurate it is. Now my board here at the moment is 528, isn't it? 528. Well, let's say we want to get a 520 millimetre cut. So we set this to 520 millimetres, like that. And we set the slave to it. So let's put that there and that there. We put the two together and set the slave to the master, like that. So that these two are now identical. And I can put my track on my panel. Let's just get rid of that and we'll push that up against the dogs. And so now you'll have to excuse my back, but we now simply push the track up until these two gauges stop against this edge. Easy peasy. So now we'll see just how accurate these are by doing another cut and measuring it, and it should read 520. Now, if that's accurate, that board should now measure 520 millimetres. So let's check, shall we? Oh, that's a little bit shy, actually. That's about a millimetre shy. 519. Now, that means that when I stuck that tape measure down, that scale, it shifted a bit. And that is incredibly easy to do. But remember, we had elongated holes, so we can fix that. Actually, this is set at about, set a bit shy of 520 anyway, so it's not quite as bad as it seems. But what we can do, keeping that locked in place, is undo these screws a wee bit and move the cursor over. There we go. 519. So now my gauge is the same as reality. And any more that I do will be exactly the same time and time and time again. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's all well and good, Steve, but what happens if you want to cut a strip from your board which is narrower than the track itself? In that case, this is no good to you. Well, this one is. It's exactly the same construction. The only difference is that I've got this T-piece on the end, nice and square. And it's calibrated in the same way. Take a test cut, measure it, slide the ruler in, stick it down. And it works like this. Let's just move those out of the way. Let's say I want to cut off a piece which is 3 inches wide. That's about 76 millimetres, but we'll set that at 3 inches. Like that. And this T-piece goes in the groove at the back of the track. Like that. And we set one end. And we slide it up to the other end. And that track is now parallel. And when I saw it this time, and I'll have to saw in the opposite direction, from that side over, then the piece that comes off will be 3 inches wide. And the only thing that you have to be careful of is if you change the blade on your saw to one with a different curve, this will no longer be accurate, because this takes into account the curve of the blade, whereas we don't need to do that with the first one that I showed you. I very much hope that you found this interesting and useful. It's a system that's worked well for me for many years now. If you've liked it, please remember to like, subscribe and share. It's the only way that these films get seen. It really does matter, and thank you for doing that. Next time I will show you how I cut my panels to length repeatedly and consistently and accurately. So until then, thank you very much for watching and enjoy your workshop. Cheerio!